Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Welcome into the first daily bet slip of 2023. He's Peter Dewey. I'm Ben Heisler. Shout out to our guy JJ for producing our show today. Plenty to dive into on the program. Pete and I are going to be going through our best bets of the night, also taking a look at yours. We will also have a debate as to whether or not there is anybody out there in the association that can catch up to Luka Doncic when it comes to his MVP odds. There's plenty of contenders. I know who Peter likes. I'm not sure if he's going to like who I like, but I'll explain my reasons why coming up a little bit later on in the show. Plus, best Monday Night Football game of the year, Bills and Bengals. You can vote on our poll right here on YouTube, or you can also go over to Twitter. Twitter.com/BetSided is where you can find the poll. We will reveal the poll results at the end of the show, as well as give out our favorite plays for Monday Night Football. Pete, what's up? Happy New Year. How has the new year been treating you in the, I suppose, 1.5 days that we've gotten together here in 2023?
It's treating me great right now, Ben, because my Knicks are giving the Suns the work right now, which has been very cool. I'm going to reference the sign early in the show today because my guy Julius Randle's getting MVP chance at the Garden right now. What a full circle moment as a Knicks fan. We watched Julius Randle savior of the season in 2019-2020, or sorry, 2020-2021. Then last year, everybody wanted him gone. As a Julius Randle believer, I feel very vindicated with how he's played this season. So it's been great. This is a great start to the new year. Exactly what I wanted to see.
It's January 2nd, and we're already having a conversation about Julius Randle for MVP on the show. Like I was ready to, kind of
I won't say he's MVP, but he's been great. He's been great. I'm just happy that people are finally realizing the Knicks are better when he is on the team. The idea of just getting rid of him to shed salary was an insane idea. I like Obi Toppin as much as the next guy. He cannot do any of the things that Julius Randle does for this basketball team. So yeah. That's where we are right now.
Perfectly reasonable take. Also curious to get your thoughts on this before we dive into the community picks for the night. What's your statute of limitations on how long you can wish somebody a happy new year? Of course, if anybody's ever watched the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, the Larry David rule, which I shared across my social platforms a little bit earlier on, is 3 days tops. By the time January 4th rolls around, people are still wishing you a happy new year. Chances are it's probably a little too late. You're already into the new year. You can still be happy. You can still have the good vibes of the new year. But, you probably got to move on from it. What's your statute of limitations here?
I saw your tweet on this, and I agree to a certain extent. I think the only exception I make is if it's somebody you're very close with that you haven't reached out to and you see them like a week after the new year, then maybe you say that. But yeah, I'm really a happy new year guy on January 1st. And then now it's kind of like, hey, that was yesterday's thing. Like, we're moving on. Yeah, let's go. Let's go. So right. I agree with your take for sure.
All right. So curious if you guys want to weigh in as well. What's the date that the New Year greeting officially cuts off? You can certainly let us know over in the chats and comments section. But Pete, let's dive into some of our favorite bests of the night. We'll of course give out ours in a couple minutes. But before we like to give out ours, we like to talk about yours. You sent them in to us at Peter Dewey 2 on Twitter, at Benny Heiss, and also at BetSided. So what is the first one, JJ, that we're going to dive into for tonight? Oh, we're getting off 2023 with a bang. That's from Joe Kagi, reaching out to Pete saying that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to win the Super Bowl. I know that we've had conversations on this very show, Pete, not necessarily you and I know that Ian McMillan, Reed Wallach were talking about some dark horse picks. I think they put together an exact Super Bowl matchup between the Jags and I think the Philadelphia Eagles. JJ, you can back me up on this, whether or not it's the two. That might have been the 49ers. Maybe something around the lines of 140-1 if those two teams end up meeting up. But Peter, they got to get into the playoffs first. Saturday night, big favorites against the Tennessee Titans, who are going to be starting Joshua Dobbs at quarterback instead of Malik Willis. So that's going to be the first game of serious playoff implications. I think the Jags can be a fun story. I don't know if I'm ready to go ahead and pencil them in to win the Lombardi Trophy just yet.
Yeah, obviously, that's my guy Joe. He's a big Jags fan, so It's a wishful bet. I will say this on this very program about a month ago. For those of you who've been our loyal listeners or loyal viewers, I did say that Ian and I did our dark horse playoff picks, and I said the Jags at 7-1. I said there was a path, but they had to beat the Lions. They didn't beat the Lions, and they still have figured out a way to put themselves in position. I think they're in a great position. You tell me Josh Dobbs in Week 18, I'm taking Trevor Lawrence every single time. I think they're a better team than the Titans. Um, I am really hoping that this Jags team makes the playoffs. The Super Bowl, I don't know, but they are going to have a home game in the first round if they win this division. So, I mean, maybe if there's a million upsets, maybe. But it's wishful thinking. But I do think they make the playoffs. I will say that.
It's hard to envision a scenario where they just wet the bed in the final game of the year at home. It's going to be a fired up fan base. And Tennessee, for as good of a team as they were in the early portion of the season, a lot of it was frankly smoke and mirrors. And they were a really good. I remember having these conversations here on the show about how they were the best team in the NFL for a long time at stopping teams on third down. Like they just weren't gaining yards. And all of a sudden, the floodgates opened and the offense just went from bad to terrible. Treylon Burks going down was not helpful. Now Ryan Tannehill's out. Derrick Henry missing some time. They just didn't have any threats to begin with. Part of the reason that John Robinson, their general manager, lost their job. So they're in a really, really rough spot. They're currently 6.5-point favorites. Also, shout out to our guy, Cody Wells, who mentioned here in the chat that he got the Eagles and Bills for a Super Bowl matchup back in week 1 at 90-1 odds. I'll be pulling for that, Cody. That's at least that's going to be a really compelling game here in Kansas City. I don't know if I can necessarily say that publicly because the Chiefs have been they've been so frustrating lately. Also, buy stocks as he likes Buffalo 34, Cincy 27 tonight. We will of course be talking about Monday Night Football coming up in a little bit here on the program when we dive into our game of the night. So that's one on the board, not necessarily one for tonight's slate, Pete, but Jacksonville Jaguars Super Bowl pick getting off 2023 with a bang. What's next on our list, JJ? Oh, it's our guy, Cody. Plenty of stuff to dive into with just a barn burner of a matchup between the Rutgers Scarlet Knights and the Purdue Boilermakers at Mackey Arena. He's going with 2 plays. He likes Rutgers at +8 and the under at 131, and talking about how both of these two teams, 3rd and 24th in just defense, they're both slow. Neither of these teams have been shooting the 3-ball particularly well. Really good defensive teams in a very slow tempo. He'll take the 8 points and the under. Hard to disagree. I don't know how much Big Ten basketball, Pete, you've been watching of late. Rutgers is one of those teams that when I have watched them play, they're so maddening because of how slow they play and because of how physical. It reminds me of some of those Michigan State teams, those try-hard teams from several years ago when they weren't necessarily as talented offensively, but they'll grind it out. And what's interesting about Purdue is the last few years they've been so talented offensively. They still have Zach Edey. It's a big force inside. But they weren't necessarily the best team defensively. And you're starting to see kind of a shift back to the way that Mac Painter likes to play a lot of these games, and the defensive nature that he came in with to Purdue is starting to come through. Typically in these spots, a low total and that many points, I get the play on Rutgers. But Purdue's a different animal this year, and I have to wonder whether or not if they get hot, that could put Rutgers away right from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I feel like Purdue's due, like UConn just lost this weekend. I feel like Purdue's due at some point to lose one of these games. Like at some point they're going to lose. I don't know if it comes. I don't think it comes today, but I don't mind. You make a good point about the total. Like sometimes you got to kind of trust Vegas a little bit. I guess the way to say it. But if this game is around 131, 135, if it ends up in that kind of range for the total, it's going to be tough for somebody to really run away with this game on either side. Obviously, more so for the Purdue side, just because there's not going to be that many points scored. I don't necessarily have a lean in this game. Cody makes a really good point. I kind of like his underplay a little bit more than taking Rutgers, just because Purdue has been so good this season. But it's a tough one because Edey's a matchup nightmare for basically everybody in the country. There is nobody who can just one-on-one defend him. So if Rutgers gets into foul trouble early, or if he just starts going off early, it's going to be an uphill battle for sure.
I don't know how Rutgers gets to 60 points in this game. Ken Pom has it as a
Yeah.
66-60 victory for Purdue. Literally everything that Rutgers can try to do offensively, Purdue can stop. Literally everything. And then on the other side, Rutgers' defense is tremendous, and I think if there is an advantage for Purdue is that they don't really shoot a lot of threes. They only shoot 30.5% from beyond the arc. And Rutgers is the third best defensive three-point shooting team defense in the nation. But there are some aspects to this game that I think allow for Purdue, but it's just going to be a punch in the mouth game after game after game. So I think the play makes sense. I'd probably lean on the under as well for that one. But good analysis, Cody. Cody's been crushing it all throughout the college basketball season. You should be giving him a follow as well at Cody Wells 1981. He always posts his plays on his Twitter account, and usually you can get a lot of pretty good lines. His closing line values pretty sharp. We got any more on the board for today, JJ, or is that it?
We got one more.
We got one more. We got the Indiana Pacers -1.5 tonight. Pacers have been playing some solid basketball, Peter. A team that, was kind of in that same conversation for a long time as the Utah Jazz. Got off to sort of a pretty solid start. Went back and forth for a little bit. At one point, they were one of the worst first quarter covering teams in the NBA, but they've really turned it around. Now a 1 to 1.5 point favorite at home against the Toronto Raptors tonight.
Yeah, my guy Drake sending this one in. I like the Pacers too. If we want to kind of pull this into our best bets, Ben, because I'm on the Pacers tonight as well. I think they're playing some of their best basketball of the season. I'm starting to think they might end up being a playoff team. Like they might end up being a play-in playoff team in the Eastern Conference. At home so far this season, they're 12-7, but very solid at home. And they've beaten 3 quality basketball teams on this homestand. They beat the Atlanta Hawks, they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, they beat the Los Angeles Clippers. This is probably, I'd say, the easiest matchup that they've had coming into this. I like them against this Raptors team. The Raptors have been really bad on the road this year, so I don't mind laying the points with the Pacers. I have a best bet on them too, if we want to talk that as well.
Really quickly, I know that we kind of gave the Sacramento Kings a really hard time about the trade that sent Tyrese Halliburton over to Indy in exchange for Sabonis, and a few other guys got moved in that trade as well. I can't help but wonder if that ended up being just like a perfect trade for both sides.
Trade.
Really working out nicely on both sides for both Sacramento and Indy, who are in the thick of playoff contention.
It was a really good trade. I think the thing I'm more sad about is that the Kings took Davion Mitchell in that draft. I don't know who else they could have taken, like the year before. Yeah. I don't know who else they could have taken, because I feel like there was a guy who, if you knew you were going to make a move like this, if you knew you were willing to trade Halliburton, who would have been a better fit. Not saying Davion Mitchell's a bad player, but just offensively, he's a little limited in his game, and he's a smaller guard, so there's just less switchability on defense. But you're right, Sabonis has been unbelievable for them. You talk about a guy who's like all-star, probably playing the best basketball of his career. He's been fantastic. And Halliburton's a rising star. He looks like an all-star right now. So it's very rare that you see both sides kind of work out this well. But I think if you're the Pacers, the Kings obviously they're competing this year, but for the Pacers, this is like way ahead of schedule. I think they thought they were going to be rebuilding for a couple years, and now all of a sudden, I wonder if they even consider trading Miles Turner or Buddy Hield at the deadline, because they're the 6th seed right now. Like if they end up being come the deadline in that 6, 7, 8 area, why would you trade those guys? Like your team's already there. You're not going to get a good enough pick even if you trade them. So why not go and play for the playoffs?
Did you see the note, by the way, about the reason Buddy Hield ended up making the fastest three-pointer in NBA history to start a game? It was because one of his teammates' dads came up to him. Might have been Halliburton.
It was Halliburton's, yeah.
Halliburton's dad came up to him and basically said, like, son, don't even dribble. Just get the ball and shoot it. And sure enough, the first shot of the game went in for Buddy Hield, went in with about 3 seconds after the opening tip. Set a new NBA record in the process. So it's what happens when you listen to some smart people around you. And sure enough, Buddy Hield ended up getting it going. So those are our community picks for tonight. Thanks to everybody for participating and sending that in to us. Let's now dive into our best bets Pete, of course, is going with the association. Got a couple different plays on the money line tonight, and then also a player prop. I've got a couple of player props in the league, and then also a play in college basketball. So, Pete, let's go ahead and start. We'll go back and forth with our player props. I'll kind of kick things off, and then I'll go to you, and then I'll finish up with my player prop before we move on to your money line play. So let me start off with my first player prop of the night, and that's Jordan Poole of the Golden State Warriors. Boy, what an opportunity he has right now. Over 2.5 against the Atlanta Hawks for made 3-point shots. It's a little juicy right now, still available. DraftKings at -165. Most books have already moved this line up to 3.5. And honestly, if you want to take it with plus odds, I think it's perfectly reasonable because he's facing against a Hawks team that has struggled in allowing 3 balls, and their defense really has not shown up over the last couple of games, averaging 129.5 points given up. And that's coming against some bad teams, too, in the Indiana Pacers and the Los Angeles Lakers. Yeah, they both play a little bit on the faster side, but there's really been no defense of late in Atlanta. As far as Poole goes, since the Warriors have returned home, they've won 4 straight games. He's currently in a stretch, Pete, where he's taken 10 or more 3-point attempts in 4 of his last 5 games and also 6 of his last 7. He's been inconsistent, but he's coming off a game where he had 5 made 3-pointers out of 10 attempts. I think he's on the right, starting to get on the right side of some of that variance based on the percentages. He's continuing to shoot a ton of threes, and to get over 2.5, considering the amount that he takes, considering the struggles on defense for Atlanta, I think this is a really good spot. And collectively as a team, the Warriors' home road splits are insane. They're 16-2 straight up at home compared to 3-16 on the road. I know it's a little juicy, like I said, but I think it's a really good spot for Jordan Poole to hit his over. Give me over 2.5 made 3-pointers, -165 for Jordan Poole tonight at home.
Yeah, I love that play. The volume that's like one of my favorite things. You've heard me talk about a gazillion times about, on this show about volume when you're betting NBA player props. If there's anybody who's taking a ton of shots right now, it's Jordan Poole. So that's about as good of a find as you can get at 2.5 tonight.
Jordan Poole is the guy that on New Year's that it's 11:57. He's texting everybody on his phone trying to get somebody to kiss at midnight. Shoot or shoot. That's Jordan Poole right now. What about for you on the player prop side? Who do you like tonight?
Yeah, so I took 2 rebound props today. This one I'm taking is Jalen Duran over 8.5 boards against the Blazers. I was on Julius Randle over 10.5 boards in the Knicks Suns game, and that hit, which was big for your boy because I've been slumping lately. So I'm hoping this is we're back on track here. Christmas Day was a rough one for me, so really trying to turn things back around. But I like Jalen Duran over 8.5 boards here. He's coming off his worst game of the season, so I think this is a buy low spot. Dealt with a lot of foul trouble in his last game. Only ended up playing 13 minutes and 31 seconds. He had 4 fouls, did not grab a rebound. Just a god-awful game. So you see all that happen. Obviously, this line has moved down. It's been hovering around 9.5, sometimes even 10.5 in some of his games. So to get it at 8.5 here, I think we're getting some value. Since he moved into the starting lineup 12 games ago, he's averaging 11.4 rebounds per game. That's counting the 0 rebound game he had on New Year's Eve. So he has been clearing 8.5 boards easily over the stretch. He's done it in 8 of his last 12 games. Every game that he missed outside of the 0 rebound, the other 3, he landed on exactly 8. So you have a floor here where he's probably going to see 8 rebounds, and you just got to hope he gets that 9th one. But the other ones, all of the other games, double digits. So this isn't going to be this is probably going to be one you're going to see him. It's going to be 10 plus boards, or you're going to have to sweat it. He's going to be around 8. So I like him a lot here. Blazers are top 11 in the league in rebounding percentage, but not, an insane rebounding team. They don't have a ton of size. Like Yusuf Nurkic is going to bang with him, but Duran's extremely, extremely athletic. Seeing a ton of minutes too, since he moved into the starting lineup, playing over 30 minutes a game in most of those games. So I like him to bounce back here. I think we're getting some value on this line because he just had a foul trouble game. If he can stay out of foul trouble, he's going to be a beast on the glass.
Yeah, certainly like the opportunity for Jalen tonight. I don't know if that's a sign that I need to bet an underdog tonight or there's a burglar outside my house, but the dog is absolutely losing it, at least in the moment. But we'll continue on. I got one more player prop to dive into. Kyle Anderson, nice little assist number tonight at over 3.5. With Timberwolves hosting the Denver Nuggets. We've talked about home and road splits. It's not just Golden State, Pete, that's been just so radically different, home versus away. Denver's been the same way, and their defense especially really, really struggles on the road. Looking at some of the numbers as far as assists allowed per game, Denver ranks in the bottom 8 at most assists allowed. Like teams like Houston, San Antonio, Charlotte, Chicago, bad defensive teams. That's where Denver ranks as far as giving up assist opportunities away from home. The defense seems to go back to the level that they needed to play at. And you have somebody like Anderson who's been getting a little bit more minutes of late, coming off of a game where he had 34 minutes. It was a loss to Detroit. And even though the minutes were higher, the assist total didn't hit. But in the previous games, he had 4, 3, 2, 5, 5, 6, and 12. This is someone that's distributing the basketball for Minnesota on a consistent basis. And other than a couple games that were blowouts towards the end of December, he's consistently getting in that 28 to 33, 34 minute range. So there's opportunities for him to distribute. There's plenty of roles that he can play for this Timberwolves team to be able to distribute the basketball. I think 3.5 is a little bit too low, especially for a team that in Denver, they're going to put up points and you're going to have to run with them. You're going to have to dish it out a little bit. So I think the line is a bit too low here. I like the -120 compared to where you can find it some other books. So Kyle Anderson, 3.5 assists over tonight for the Timberwolves at home against the Nuggets.
I don't mind that one at all, especially because Denver on a back-to-back too. Just gonna be some tired legs a little bit. Played Boston last night. Now back on now on the road. The tough travel, really wild travel. Honestly, they had him go from Denver to Minnesota in a back-to-back, but it's Adam Silver's NBA, I guess, Ben. I don't know. I got a couple money line plays. I kind of talked the Pacers one, so I'll talk my Sixers one here. I'm taking the Sixers -170 on the money line against Pelicans. I know this is juicy, but like I said, I've been in a bit of a slump. So trying to here, I'm willing to lay the -170 instead of the 4.5, just because the Pelicans are a very good basketball team. But there's a few reasons why I like the Sixers here. Obviously, these two teams played last week, and the Pelicans won. They won 126-117. So that was in New Orleans, and CJ McCollum and Zion Williamson combined for 78 points in that game. That is not going to happen again tonight. The Sixers are the number 2 defense in the NBA right now. I feel that game, to me, it was an anomaly type of game. Philly normally plays really slow, plays really well defensively. Both things kind of got out of hand in that game. It was also Tyrese Maxey's first game back in the lineup, so a little bit of rust, just kind of integrating him into the rotation. But I like the Sixers here for a couple reasons. At home this season, as home favorites, they're 9-5-1 against the spread. And then we talk about teams, with crazy home road splits. Pelicans this year at home, 16-4 straight up. On the road, 7-9. Much worse team on the road than they've been at home. On the road also, they lost to the Grizzlies by 15 right after that Sixers game. So very, very different team. I also think that the injuries are at some point going to catch up to this Pelicans team. Like I said, they got 78 points out of McCollum and Zion to win that game. They don't have Brandon Ingram again tonight. They don't have Larry Nance again tonight. I just think the Sixers have too much firepower with everybody in the lineup. With Maxey, Harden, Tobias Harris, and Embiid, it's just too much. At home, I think they get it done. If you want to lay the 4.5, that's kind of where I'm leaning, but I'm trying to play this one a little bit safer, get some wins back on the board. So taking the Sixers on the money line.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. The Pelicans, too, especially dealing with some of their injuries, have been a little bit up and down. And I also wonder, as dominant as Zion has been, at some point, teams are going to start to make adjustments, and you can only contain Zion so much. But when you really start to double team him all over the court, is he always going to be able to make the right pass? And that's been a little bit up and down for him. So certainly with Philadelphia, I know that they'd lost the game and snapped an 8-game losing streak just a couple of games ago. Certainly think this is the right spot for them in this particular moment. So with you on that play as well. Final game for me goes into college basketball, a little Big 12 action. I don't know if it's necessarily an official Big Monday game because the Monday Night Football is still on, so it's not taking center stage. But you got two really strong defensive teams going head-to-head with West Virginia and Oklahoma State. I had a chance to watch Oklahoma State play over the weekend, Pete, and that's a very fundamentally sound defensive team. They gave KU everything they can handle at Allen Fieldhouse, and that's also a team that has won I'm trying to remember the exact stat. It's Bill Self has won more Big 12 championships than has losses at Allen Fieldhouse. So anytime you go to the Fog and basically do everything you can to keep a really good KU offense from doing anything, it's certainly impressive. But this is two really good defenses that play a lot of pressure defense that's going to limit their opponents from shooting really good shots. You have West Virginia 41st in adjusted efficiency, Oklahoma State's 18th. Effective field goal percentage. The Cowboys are the 7th best in allowing quality shots. And you also have just two teams that, even though West Virginia's offense right now is ranked 26th in adjusted offensive efficiency, and they're 44th in 3-point percentage and they're 41st in 2-point percentage. They've made a lot of contested shots, Peter, and I just don't know how sustainable that's going to be, especially against a really good quality defense like Oklahoma State. I think you're just seeing too many points for tonight's matchup, and I think the fact that it's all the way up at 139 is reflective on how good West Virginia's offense has been, when I think they're probably due for some regression, especially going on the road. So give me the under at 139.5 for the big Monday matchup, even though it's not officially Big Monday as of yet.
I don't mind that play at all. I think obviously the West Virginia press as well, and it just mucks up every single game. I feel like you hate to see those kind of, college basketball is so different than the NBA, and like you can see players actually get phased by a press, which is crazy. And so I think that kind of turns it into, if that's what happens, you're going to see a low scoring game for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What about
we gotta talk Pacers.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like it wasn't even, but we got one more in the NBA for you, another money line play.
Yeah, so I touched on the Pacers a little bit when we were going over Dreg's pick. I love Indiana tonight. So far this season, the Raptors 5-12 on the road. They've been one of the worst road teams in the NBA. They're also, this is an interesting stat I found. So they've played 11 games as road dogs this season. They're 7-4 against the spread in those games, but they're 3-8 straight up. So they're covering, but they're not winning these games. So I like the Pacers on the money line here. It's 1.5 points. If you want to lay the 1.5, go for it. I'm just, like I said, trying to get back on track here. Just going to take the Pacers on the money line. Indiana, really good wins on this homestand. Offensively, they've been solid this year. They're going to push the pace. Toronto likes to slow things down. Fred VanVleet's also questionable for this game. If he ends up not playing, I think this line moves a little bit further towards Indiana. Obviously, he's probably the second best player for the Raptors. So I just think the Pacers are too hot right now. They've looked really good against quality opponents. It's not like they're beating up on the Pistons and the Magic. Like, they're beating playoff teams. And at home, they've been fantastic this year. They're 12-7 against the spread, 12-7 straight up. So I like the Pacers to win this one. I think they go on the road after this game. So I think they close out this homestand with a win.
Like it quite a bit. -120 for the Pacers against a struggling Toronto team on the road. All right, let's take one last look at where we are going for our best bets of the night, and then dive into a little bit of fun in the NBA futures market. So make sure you guys stick around for that. Plus, of course, our game of the night coverage coming up for the Bills and the Bengals in about 5 minutes or so. I'm going with over 2.5. Jordan Poole made 3-pointers tonight, as well as the over for Kyle Anderson assists, like the under in the West Virginia-Oklahoma State game. Pete is going with the over 8.5 on Jalen Duran rebounds at -130. He's also taking a couple money line plays in the association tonight with the Sixers at home against the Pelicans and the Pacers at home -120 against the Toronto Raptors. All right. So in the interest of full transparency, when we were trying to discuss what we wanted to dive into for this part of the show, Pete and I, both NBA guys, we figured let's have a little bit of conversation with the NBA MVP discussion. And right now, Luka Doncic is on an absolute tear, putting up monster numbers night after night. Dallas has moved their way up the standings. They're firmly in contention for possibly even the number 1 seed in the Western Conference this year. There's no question that based off the odds, it's reasonable to look at Luka Doncic as the top contender at this point in time for the NBA MVP. But what we also notice that there's plenty of guys that you can really make a strong case for that not only can maybe work their way up to catch Luka Doncic in the latest odds, but perhaps even surpass him and take it away from him as well. So my question to you, Peter, is that if you're not going to be betting Luka Doncic to win the NBA MVP this year, who would be your guy?
Ben, I think you know who my guy's going to be because it's the same guy I bet on last year. I think it's going to be Nikola Jokic. I took
3 years in
Giannis.
a row, Jokic is going to
I
get it.
do. I do. I took Giannis preseason because I thought the Middleton injury, like early in the season, if they got off to a hot start, which they did, they kind of cooled off. I thought he could build himself kind of a case, but he's not having like the crazy Giannis here I thought he was going to have. He's still putting up great numbers, and he's there. I think he's at 425 at DraftKings, but I think Jokic at 350. I don't know if I bet it right now at this number, but I still think he is the guy who, if I'm taking anybody to catch Luka, it's him. And I went through this last year, and it's a little bit different because Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are back. But now the Nuggets are the 1 seed right now in the West. Obviously, everybody's really jumbled at the top of the West. The 1 seed and the 9 seed are separated by 5.5 games. So anything can change, over the stretch of the season. But the whole argument for Nikola Jokic the last couple of years is that he took a team that was a below average basketball team to the playoffs without even having to play in the play-in tournament. And we said, well, what's going to happen when he gets Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. back? Well, they're just going to be the best team in the conference because that's what they look like right now. They have the number 2 offense in the NBA, and that's all him. He is the primary facilitator in this offense. He, when he needs to be, can be their best scorer. He's their best rebounder. He's their best player. I think he right now, there's a very strong argument that he is the most impactful player in the NBA. And that's where I'm going with this because if you look at Nikola Jokic, last year I did it too. You look at his on-off numbers this season per 100 possessions. When Nikola Jokic is on the floor, the Denver Nuggets are plus 10.5 points per 100 possessions. When he is off the floor, the Denver Nuggets are minus 13.2 points per 100 possessions. They are plus 23.7 points net when Nikola Jokic is on the floor versus off the floor. And this is why I think the argument, even with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., that's the crazy part. Here's the other wild thing. If you watch the NBA, just casually watch the NBA, you think there's no way somebody does more for their team than Luka Doncic. And you probably be right just off of watching it. He has the ball in his hands all the time. He has to score all these points. The Mavs this season, when Luka's on the floor, plus 5.1 points per 100 possessions. When he's off the floor, minus 4.0. So the Denver Nuggets are 9 points worse than the Dallas Mavericks when Nikola Jokic is off the floor versus the Dallas Mavericks when Luka Doncic is off the floor. That's not the only reason, but that, to me, the impact that Nikola Jokic has on the floor, when he is off the floor, this Denver Nuggets team is not good. But when he is on the floor, he is so impactful. They're the best team in the Western Conference right now. So to me, I think just where the numbers are right now, I think it's up for grabs. There's 5 people. It's Doncic, Jason Tatum, Giannis, KD, and Jokic. Those 5 guys, I think, all have a fair argument right now you can make. And you could probably throw Embiid in there too because he's been very good this season. But I think Nikola Jokic, just the amount of impact he has, if you take him off that team, I just don't know where the Denver Nuggets are. I don't know where the Dallas Mavericks are either. But when you look at the numbers versus off the floor, the Dallas Mavericks are a better basketball team without Luka compared to the Nuggets without Jokic. That is kind of where I'm going. They're both fantastic players, but if anybody's going to catch Luka, it's going to be Jokic, and we've seen him do it. Like, he won the back-to-back MVPs for a reason. I would not be shocked if he wins a third.
Very compelling points for Nikola Jokic. And yes, you did say that this is going to be a guy that you were likely leaning towards. And what's nice about your argument, too, is that there's actual information and data that suggests that this is something that can be attainable year after year with Jokic, because that's how he's won the MVP award the last couple of years. So he's certainly in play, and I don't think anybody would bat an eye if Doncic continues his run, surpasses Luka Doncic down the rest of the way. And I might have said Jokic and Doncic. I might have confused it too, but I think you kind of get my gist here. I'm going to throw a surprise name your way, because I think if you're actually looking at value on the board, because all these guys are kind of all right around the same area. Doncic is plus 275. Jokic is plus 335, 350. Give or take maybe, plus 100, plus 150 in odds. And you go all the way down to plus 1,200. Some books even have it at plus 1,300. Why is Joel Embiid all the way down on this list? I can't figure out for the life of me, because this is somebody that up until Luka Doncic went on this massive run was leading the NBA in scoring, was averaging just under 9.8 rebounds per game, Still dishing out just under 5 assists per game. Helping to facilitate one of the better defenses in the Eastern Conference. And Philadelphia has been fairly consistent after a bad start to the year. And Embiid's stability after a slow start has been a catalyst for their dominance. Philadelphia's a good team this year, and I think they're answering a lot of concerns that were addressed about him. James Harden's been able to open up his assist game. He's been doing better. They've also been dealing with some injuries, and Embiid's been a steady presence there. I looked at Basketball Reference's probabilities for MVP. Right at the top of the list is your guy, Nikola Jokic, followed by Doncic. But third on that list is Embiid. And like, if you look at all the different players ahead of him, he's all the way down at 6th. The numbers dictate Embiid to have a shot. And if we're going to be making statistical arguments for players as the reason for them being a top tier MVP candidate, even plus minus, the Sixers are minus 11 when Embiid is off the floor. So this is somebody that has put up really strong numbers all season long, but the narrative just hasn't been reflecting that. I still think there's enough time, especially if the Sixers continue to play well, especially if they start winning a few more games on the road, that Embiid will be back in that conversation where he belongs near the top of the list, as opposed to in that top 5, top 6 conversation. I think I'm buying low on Embiid when there's been no reason to feel like you're buying low. He's been putting up exceptional numbers all throughout the course of the year. He's been in that same discussion, I believe, as Jokic and Doncic. And the value, it's never going to be higher. So go ahead and give me Embiid at a really good number at plus 1,200 for an MVP candidate in the NBA.
I really like that, Ben, because I think the Sixers are kind of poised to go on a run here now that Maxey and Harden are back. Like, he carried them through that entire start of the season. They didn't have Harden for a good stretch, and then immediately after Maxey got hurt. And the fact that they're still in the 5 seed, like, they didn't really fall off too much. Like, they could make a push if they pass the Cavs, if they pass the Nets, if they pass the Bucks or the Celtics. Like, if they get up into that top 3, depending upon who's ahead of them, like, I think it's really hard just to talk about some of the other – like, it's hard to make an argument for Jason Tatum. Not that Jason Tatum's having a bad year, but, like, he's another guy on his team getting 25 a game. Like, Jaylen Brown is probably the best sidekick that any of these – that's tough because Kyrie Irving is a very good basketball player, but he might be the best sidekick that any of these guys have. And then the same thing goes with KD. He has Kyrie Irving. KD's been putting up insane scoring numbers. But I just think, like, what you need in terms of the impact – and I love that you brought up that NBA stats, like, how good is this team if this guy's not? I think that matters so much.
Yeah.
And him and Jokic for the last 2 years has been, when those guys aren't on the floor, those teams are struggling mightily. So I think Embiid is definitely worth a shot. He's what, plus 1,200? You said, like, that's 1,200. He's way right down now. There. Yeah,
on the board, which is ludicrous.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there you go. Those are our picks, at least by the early portion of January. For the NBA MVP conversation. Pete, of course, making a very strong argument for Nikola Jokic. I'm going a little bit further down on the board for guys that can catch up to Luka Doncic with Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll move on from the association. As much as Peter and I love to talk NBA basketball, let's move on. It is, of course, our game of the night. The Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati Bengals. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati tonight. Fantastic matchup that has seen the odds, Pete, surprisingly, I would say, move in favor of Buffalo really throughout the course of the week. Right now, where we see things are the Bills is a 2.5-point favorite on the road against Cincinnati. Total in this game has moved up throughout the course of the week. It is now sitting at 50.5 at most consensus books. Where are you going for this one? It's a fascinating matchup, arguably the best Monday Night Football game on the schedule this year. Who do you like, and where are you going to go for this one?
I'm going bold in this one. I think the Bengals are going to win this game tonight. And I think they're going to have a shot. Obviously, they're going to need the Chiefs to lose next week to do it. But I think they're going to have a shot at this 1 seed in the AFC. I've been kind of penciling this in for Cincy. I said they win out. There's a chance if the Chiefs lose one of these games. I was kind of hoping my Broncos would upset them yesterday so that this could be in line. But this is nothing against the Bills. The Bills are a great football team. But the Bengals have been fantastic the second half of this year. I think people got off to they got off to a slow start, and so people were like, "Oh, there we go. The Bengals coming back to." They look great to kind of close the season. The best team against the spread in the NFL over the last 2 years. I believe they're 26-10 counting playoff games. So that's extremely impressive. And so I don't know. Like I don't mind betting them obviously as underdogs. I think they're gonna win though at home here. They won their one game as a home dog so far this season. And Joe Burrow said, I believe Joe Burrow said it the other day, one of his press conferences, like they've beaten everybody that's been in front of them. And he's not wrong. They've beaten everybody in front of them. The only team we haven't really seen them beat is these Buffalo Bills. So I'm gonna ride with the Bengals here to win this game. It's an aggressive pick, but I just think there's too much momentum on their side at home, I think they can win this one.
First of all, I've seen you make some aggressive bets. The Cincinnati Bengals at home is not an aggressive bet. Like, yeah, they're a money line underdog
against the Bills. I don't know.
I think it's a conviction play. I think it's a smart
Definitely.
play. I personally bet the Bills earlier in the week when the number is at -1.5. So at least right now I've got the better number, but you can find it over at BetSided today. I wrote up the 3 betting trends that are certainly the most compelling for this matchup. You mentioned the Bengals against the spread. One of the things I talked about is that they've been an absolute juggernaut going all the way back to 2020. Cincinnati is 35-16-1 against the spread. They've covered in just under 69% of their games. It's nearly 10 percentage points better than the Green Bay Packers that are at 58.8%. So you can trust the Bengals over the course of not just this year where they're 12-3-0 against the spread, but over the last 3 seasons to cover and cover convincingly because they've been the best covering team in the NFL over those last 3 years. However, I came across another trend that I found to be as compelling. And even though that I'm taking the Bills here, there's another play that is still available on the board, and it's leading me to the under because based off trends over the last 95 games and occurrences where this has happened, when the road team is favored in 2022, unders have gone 61-33-1. And when these teams have been favored by a field goal or less, unders have had a 77% clip going 24-7-1. Both of these two teams have actually been very good under teams throughout the course of this year. I don't feel like enough people discuss that because of how good their defenses are. We always talk about Allen and Burrow and the massive weapons that they have on both sides. But you have a team that's gone 10-5 to the under in Buffalo, 9-5-1 to the under for Cincinnati. Both these teams are hitting on average above 65% to unders this year. 50.5 is a lot of points for 2 really good defenses. And yeah, the quarterbacks are incredible, but there is going to be some rain. It's still going to be a little bit of wind. Allen's still not at 100%. Got to think, Peter, this game might end up, 23-20, surprise everybody by going under at 50.5. I think the trend suggests that that's the play to go. And I'll go ahead and take it because I like that matchup. And I like both of these defenses really coming to play tonight.
That's an unbelievable trend. That's a great find by you because that is that's crazy. Yeah, I don't mind that 50.5. It does seem like I think Buffalo's defense has been really good this year. I know they don't have Von Miller, but I feel like their defense is a little under like 50.5. If you're expecting this game to be as close as it is, you're kind of saying shootout. I think that's kind of selling the Bills defense short. And the Bengals have been no slouch on defense themselves this season. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think a good these like teams, both good defensive teams. We saw it kind of in the Super Bowl where it was like, both these offense, good defensive teams too. Like you can't discount that. And we've seen how many times in these kind of big games where defense kind of reigns supreme. So I don't mind the under at all.
One other prop that I like for this game is Josh Allen's under 22.5 completions. The Bengals have been the best team in the NFL in opposing quarterback completion rate. And Allen, especially dealing with that injury, it's gotten better. He's gotten a little bit more consistent. But I think they're going to try and force him, Devin Singletary, to run as opposed to giving him plenty of easy options down the field in this weather on the road. So fascinating matchup. Cannot wait for it to come through. Pete, the public sort of agrees with you. They are taking and when I say the public, I mean, of course, the great community here at BetSided. They're going Bengals plus 2.5 tonight. Which makes sense given the sense that it's a good line where they are. You can get them at the best possible value on the board. So the community's going with the Bengals. I have Buffalo -1.5. Pete is going with the Bengals on the money line. Fun show today. Always appreciate you guys hanging out, talking with us, weighing in on the chat as well. Special thanks to our guy JJ for producing and directing the show as well. Pete, good luck with all of your bets tonight. Hopefully you guys will join us back here again tomorrow. It'll be Ian McMillan back on the program, I believe, with Reed Wallet. The two of them will be back getting ready for the college football national championship game. I'd also be talking a little NFL early leans as well. So for my guy Peter, I'm Ben. May all of your best bets hit tonight. We will do this again tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern for Daily Bet Slip. Until then, so long.